Well, I guess matters like that can't be helped. Show me your student ID card, and I'll let you on your way to class with a late note. He put his hoof forward to take her card. After putting down her saddlebag, she pulled her card out via a levitation spell and gave it to him. After staring at the card for a moment, the stallion spoke to her with shock. "Wait, you're the daughter of Mezzo-Soprano and Paradiddle?" "Why, Mezzo-Soprano has the most haunting voice in the operatic world." "And didn't Paradiddle play drums for Frank Sinatra, Jr.? He grew more excited with each word. Yeah, don't get so freaked about it. They're not as great as you think," the pony responded apathetically. "Now, could you please give me my card and my note? I'm late to Miss Cantata's class, and I miss my friend." "Well, by all means. Here you are, miss." He gave her a signed post-it note and her student ID card, which she placed in her saddlebag before trotting toward her classroom. Room 68. After reading this from her late note, she checked the number of the door immediately adjacent to her. It read, "Room 22." As she sighed and made her way down the hall, the roll call continued. "Tremolo Pick," the teacher called out the penultimate name on her list. A pony in the back row was losing himself in hard rock music. "Tremolo Pick!" This time she yelled. Still no answer. Frustrated, she made her way to the back of the classroom and slammed her hoof on his desk. With a grunt, he took out his pair of red earphones and simply said, "What?" "Though this is a music school, we still have rules. No music in the main classroom. We play our music after lunch. Now give me those earphones. You'll get them back at the end of class." The angry guitarist sighed and put his earphones on the desk before watching his teacher swipe them away. Miss Cantata loved teaching. She truly did. But that year, between the infamous Bubblegum Pop and Tremolo Pick, who had just the previous year been suspended a total of 13 times, she knew she had her work cut out for her. As she returned to her desk, she called out the final name on her list. "Vinyl Scratch? Is Vinyl Scratch here?" Tremolo Pick pointed his hoof at the empty desk he had been sitting next to, which rested in the northeast corner of the classroom. "Well, I guess we can't have perfect attendance every day." She marked an X next to the name Vinyl Scratch on her checklist. "Now, let's begin our first lesson. This and everything we'll do this week are just refreshers to help you remember the basics, so if you've forgotten anything from music kindergarten, that's fine." She drew a crescent shape on the chalkboard and put a colon near it. "Can any pony tell me what this is?" After a brief pause, somebody raised their hoof. "Yes, Adagio?" "It's a bass clef, right?" the lethargic pony replied. While class was really beginning to start, the unicorn on her way to class was passing room 46. "That's right, Adagio." She drew another symbol, this one more complicated than the last, and turned back to the class. "Now, who can tell me what this symbol is?" The mulberry hoof made its way gently into the air. "Morning, Uriah. What's your answer?" The timid pony replied, "It's a treble clef. Is that right?" Her voice faded again. Some ponies called it a bad habit, but she didn't really mind. "That's correct, Arya. Now, who can tell me the A knock at the door. Breakbeat picked his head up and turned around. Miss Cantata, obviously disgruntled, trotted slowly over to the door and asked, "Who's there?" An aggressive voice answered, "I'm Vinyl Scratch. Is this Mrs. Cantata's class?" The door opened, and in walked a silent, pale yellow filly whose straight multicolored mane caught the eye of every pony in the classroom. Breakbeat's eyes glistened at the sight of his best friend as he waved her away. The entire class went silent as Vinyl's gorish mane tossed around with each step she took before occupying the empty seat in the corner of the room. "Now, Miss Scratch, since you were so kind as to interrupt my class, perhaps you could tell us the difference between a treble staff and a bass staff?" Miss Cantata glared at Vinyl Scratch. "Well, aren't notes on the treble staff higher than the ones on the bass staff?" She answered a bit nervously and looked around to see who she was sharing a class with. Bubblegum Pop. Great, Vinyl thought to herself. Bubblegum Pop had made up a crazy rumor that Vinyl threw Morning Aria against a wall with her magic on the last day of music kindergarten. For such a little pony, Bubblegum Pop had such a twisted sense of humor. Looking around, Vinyl saw the filly herself, Morning Aria, who had just finished drawing a heart on a sheet of paper before holding it close to her body with a smile. Vinyl turned away from the innocent Pegasus to see her best friend since Philadelphia preschool, Breakbeat, who gazed back at her with wide eyes and an even wider grin. "Well, that's correct." Miss Cantata nodded her head and beamed. "Notes on the bass staff are typically below middle C, while the notes on the treble staff are usually above middle C." After a brief rest, Vinyl called out, "Well, if the notes on the staffs are above and below middle C, where the heck does middle C go?" She didn't raise her hoof, as usual. It was a time-waster. "Well, you see, technically any note can be placed on either staff, but you need to add a letter line to tell a reader what note it is, and the farther away from the staff a note gets, the more out of place the note gets. That's why it's always important to know which notes belong on which staff and how to place them accordingly." Vinyl placed a hoof under her chin and let out a deep breath, partly because of her sheer exhaustion from the run to her class, and partly because she didn't care much for the lessons being taught to her at all. Why did she even come to this school? She played every instrument in the band room, failing in each miserably. The first time Breakbeat allowed her to play his drum kit, she broke his favorite pair of sticks. Tremolo Pig's main grudge against her was that she'd snapped 3 strings on a guitar he had only just gotten. Every instrument she touched was cursed as long as she was in direct contact with it. So what was the point? She couldn't sing, she couldn't play music. The only reason she even came back that year was to see Breakbeat. Some days she and Breakbeat would sit at lunch, and as he would excitedly tell her about the new beat he'd learned, she would even begin to wonder if she was a musician at all. The rest of Miss Cantata's lesson was somewhat of a blur. Vinyl was still gathering her breath by the time the class's first lesson on the treble and bass clef had ended, and that was a good 15 minutes. Like always, she simply ended up retreating in her own dimension, where, unbeknownst to anybody else, she was trying her hardest to come up with a new music unlike anything heard of in ponydom. But what? In the thousands of years that ponies had existed, surely every type of music that could exist already had. Music without instruments. There's an idea. She thought this to herself and wrote it down on paper before realizing, dang it, that's what a cappella is all about. Before she had even begun to formulate his new music, her world was shattered by the ringing of a school bell. "All right, every pony, that's the lunch bell." Lunch bell? Had she really been ignoring class for that long? As every pony, save for Bubblegum Pop and another, almost non-present pony, began to leave the classroom, Vinyl and Breakbeat came to the little brown earth filly's desk, where she sat, motionless. "Hey, you there?" Vinyl waved her hoof vigorously in front of the pony. "It's lunchtime, so why don't you know, get up and go to lunch." She walked around for a moment and sighed. "Because I can't find my way. The halls, they're so black. Everything is black to my eyes. The fillies, Bubblegum Pop, and her friends, they call me sight reader, like it's some sort of joke." She tilted her head down. "I only found my way to the classroom because my mom guided me here." Breakbeat placed a hoof on the stranger's shoulder. "Well, we'll take you to the lunchroom. It isn't really that far, so no worries." Breakbeat held the filly's hoof and helped her down. "What's her name again? I wasn't really paying attention during roll call. Sorry." Breakbeat was a very straightforward pony when he wanted to be. "I'm Breakbeat, and my friend is Vinyl Scratch." "Those are wonderful names, both of them." "Well, no pony here has asked me for my name, except for the teacher. I'm Glissando." "Well, Gliss, can I call you that?" Vinyl requested. "Oh, sure, Vinyl," Gliss answered. "Well, Gliss, I know what'll cheer you up. Some good food. That always cheers me up." Vinyl spoke as she followed Breakbeat and Gliss out of the room and to lunch. "Did I tell you about how me and my family went ice skating in Germany this summer? So exotic. Has anyone else heard that Vinyl Scratch threw that pink pony against a wall? What's for lunch today? More hay bacon strips and a daffodil and daisy sandwich? Just like the end of last year." Words flooded the cafeteria. Though it was a specialized school, only musicians and the immediate family of musicians could attend. The population of the school was easily over 300, and every single one of those 300 ponies had gathered in a room all at once. It was a wonder any pony got served, Final thought to herself, as she got in line behind her old best friend and her new acquaintance. "Hey, no cutting!" A turquoise filly, at least 3 grades older than Vinyl, pushed a black pony who tried to force his way in front of her. This school was renowned for the quality of its classes, but students change every year. "So, Gliss," Breakbeat broke the awkward silence that engulfed their little group, "I haven't seen you around here. Are you new?" He turned to Gliss as if he could be seen. "My parents and I moved here this June. They said they needed a change of scenery from Van Hoover." Breakbeat's jaw dropped. "You came all the way from Van Hoover? But that's on the other side of Equestria." Breakbeat was practically shouting, to the point where Gliss felt the need to cover an ear. "Yes, but they can manage. They have the money," Gliss replied, weakly. "You said Bubblegum Pop called you Sight Reader?" As Breakbeat said the name, Gliss couldn't help but whimper. "But you only just moved here in June. How'd you meet her?" "Well, my family and I were visiting a musical performance that featured my cousin Lyra. Every pony in my family plays a stringed instrument, and hers is a lyre. But that's not the point. Apparently Bubblegum Pop's half-sister was there, so her dad took her to see the musical. Her half-sister and Lyra were decent friends at the time, so I tried to be friends with Bubblegum. Then she found out my eyes are broken. She started calling me that mean name,